Hi everyone. See this cute little cherry tomato plant? Don't leave it alone. It may look small and harmless now, but if you do nothing to it, in a month or so, it'll grow out of control, take over the garden bed, shade out your other plant, and be an absolute jungle. Instead, today I'm going to show you how to single stem your tomato plants and prune them to grow up a trellis. Especially helpful if you're growing in partial shade or in a small space like I am here. With this simple method, your plant will be healthier, under control, look nice and neat and tidy, be a healthier plant, and also be super productive and grow you a ton of tomatoes. I used to not single stem prune my tomatoes, but my tomatoes were an absolute mess. They were a big jungle. I had lots of pests, diseases, and not near the production that I hoped for. But last year, I changed to the single stem pruning method. What a huge difference. No pests, very little disease, tons of tomato production, and my tomatoes looked absolutely beautiful. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do today, and I know you're going to love it just like I do. First of all, what is single stem pruning? It's a method of pruning your tomato plants to grow up one single stem. We're also going to train it to grow up the trellis. By doing this, you're removing a lot of the branches that the tomato plant doesn't need anyway, so you can focus all the energy into producing more fruit. And here's why this works so well, especially in a partial shade garden or in a small space. You've got better airflow for your tomato plant, which means less disease, which is especially important with tomatoes as they're very susceptible to disease. It also stops your tomato plant from shading out other crops that you're planting here in the garden. You might remember from last week's video, I just planted some beans right here. And once they start to grow, I don't want my tomato plant shading it out. It also allows more sunlight to reach your tomatoes, which means more tomatoes for you. And also, you have less energy focused on leaves and more energy on fruit production. And this is a big one for me. It keeps your plant nice and tidy, helps it look really beautiful in a small space. No more jungles here. The single stem pruning method works best with indeterminate tomato plants, not determinate plants. Determinate plants are smaller, bushier, more compact plants, and pruning them can actually hinder their growth and slow their production. But indeterminate plants are huge plants, 8 to 10 feet tall at least. They grow and produce over the growing season. So this is a sun gold cherry tomato plant, an indeterminate tomato plant. Very vigorous grower and very vigorous producer. So single stemming it is really going to help manage the size. I start single stemming my tomatoes as soon as I see the first set of flower clusters. That's the sign that the tomato plant is ready to fruit and ready to get rid of all these extra branches down here. So the first step is to identify the main stem. So if I'll peel back some of these extra branches here, I can see a thicker stem at the bottom of the plant. And as I run my hand up that thicker stem, a lot of the other stems are branching off from it. This is the main stem. And I can follow this thicker main stem all the way up to the top of the plant. Now that I've identified the main stem, the next step is to prune out any branches below the first cluster of flowers, because a tomato plant doesn't need the branches below that first cluster. Now, what I'm going to use for this is a nice sharp pair of pruners. These are precision pruners. You definitely need precision pruners for this, nice and sharp. And these actually have a little curved tip, which is super helpful because then you won't damage the tomato stem as we're pruning, because the pruners kind of curve away from it. What I'm going to do first is put some isopropyl alcohol in this jar. Now, I like to dip my pruners in isopropyl alcohol in between each and every cut, because what I found is it really does help the tomato cuts heal quicker, kind of scab over, and also helps prevent bacteria from spreading from cut to cut. And it just really helps the plant recover quickly from a heavy pruning and keep on growing. So I actually keep my pruners and my little jar of alcohol down here at my potting bench. Just kind of dip it in, and we'll get to work pruning. So I'm going to start here at the lower branches. Just snip them off as close as you can to the main stem, but again, being really careful not to nick or damage that main stem. I know that sometimes it's really hard to do, especially when you have branches that are a little bit larger, but it definitely will help. When your tomato plant is small, like mine is here, it's probably close to about a foot tall now, you can actually leave some of these bottom branches in here And as the tomato plant grows, you can prune them off because then it's much more able to handle more of a severe pruning. I'm actually going to go ahead and take these off the bottom and leave these to trim off later as the plant grows. Next, I'm going to prune out those suckers, and let me show you what a sucker is. It's the branch that comes out in between the main stem and a side branch. This stem here is a sucker in that little V. Now you can either prune it out, but often it's a lot easier just to kind of bend it out and snap it off. These are very vigorous growers, and they'll take a lot of energy away from the plant if you leave it in. Plus, it'll make it super unruly. Now, the suckers do grow very fast, so I'm just going to go through here and break out the suckers from top to bottom. We have one right here. And I'll just kind of cruise down the main stem here to see if we have any more. Oops, we've got another tiny one right here. Now, as we come down the main branch, I'm noticing here that the branch at the bottom actually has a sucker on it. I was going to wait to trim this off until later, but I want to get it now because this sucker is actually getting quite large and long. And I really should have caught it earlier, but that's okay. I'm just going to prune it off now. And this one I am going to use my pruners because it's a larger branch. Just snip close to the main stem. And the cool thing about suckers too is they will root, and you can create brand new free plants just by sticking them in a glass of water, and it'll have a brand new sun gold cherry tomato plant that'll grow roots in just a couple of weeks. After I've removed the suckers, now I'm going to remove some of the fan leaves. Now the fan leaves are these branches here that kind of come out from the main stem and do not have a fruit cluster. And they do serve a very important purpose. They fan or shade the flowers and fruit clusters that are underneath, as well as provide important photosynthesis so the plant can receive energy from the sun and continue to produce. Now I'm just going to very selectively remove the fan leaves at this point because my plant is pretty small. I'm going to take a look at this one here at the bottom. There's no fruit clusters underneath, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. But I am going to leave the additional fan leaves on the plant because my plant is pretty young right now. But I'll continue to remove them selectively as the plant grows and produces more fan leaves that it doesn't really need. Now just look at all the vegetation that I've removed from my tomato plant. What a difference. The tomato plant is not now shading out any other vegetables in my garden bed that will be growing. We've created a lot more airflow underneath the plant to help prevent disease. The plant looks nice and neat and tidy. The size is managed and it's growing nice and straight and tall. It's going to look absolutely beautiful. Next, what I'm going to do is to train my tomato plant to climb up this trellis and give it some support. Now for this, my favorite way to do it is with these little tomato clips. You could definitely use stretchy tie tape or soft little pieces of t-shirt. But what I found is these are so simple and so easy. And if I don't keep it simple, I probably won't do it. So it's very simple to do. Just put it around the trellis, attach it to the stem, and snap it right into place. And I'm going to do this every couple of inches all the way up the main stem of the tomato plant. Snap right into place. You can even do it with one hand. And the key is you really have to keep up with it. Just take 10 minutes about once a week to come out here and prune and clip. And that way your plant stays under control, looks nice and tidy, and will grow absolutely beautifully this way. Now you know why I never leave my tomato plants alone and why you should neither. It will totally change the way you grow tomatoes forever, especially in partial shade and especially in a small space. If you're going to try this method this growing season, I want to hear about it, especially if it's your very first time. Thanks for watching. See you next time in the garden.